All right, section 2 in chapter 27, we're going to look specifically at the Korean War and McCarthyism. Korean War is important because it's still, the impacts are still felt in the world today. And McCarthyism is the idea, the concept behind this is starting to make a comeback, especially with people's concerns with the government surveillance and phone tapping, things like that. Right, so just a quick little background on we had Berlin, the first hotspot, getting into a little bit more of a global mindset. All right, 1949, China is going to undergo a revolution, right, and it's going to become communist. So here's the Soviet Union up here, so you can see communism is starting to spread, right, and that's going to worry the United States because now you're looking at all of Southeast Asia possibly becoming communist as well. So Chinese forces overthrow the nationalists. We actually supported the nationalists, right? Once again, there's that idea of containment. But here's where we get into Korea, right? Korea is located right here on the map, right? After the war, Korea is going to be split in half, all right? North of the 38th parallel, which would be that would be a line of latitude going this way, all right? Above it was North Korea, right, which ends up becoming a communist country. The Soviet Union has influence there. China has, just as much influence as well. And then the United States is going to support South Korea, which is still the same mindset today. North Korea, right, is very much anti-United States, and South Korea is one of our allies. We do have troops stationed there. All right, now we look at the actual conflict, okay? North Korea, in an attempt to spread communism and unite Korea, is going to send troops into South Korea. Now the United States turns to the United Nations, newly formed, right, after World War II, right, and United Nations troops are then going to be sent in, right? Now most of the troops were from countries around the world. Well, all the troops are from countries around the world, but most of them are going to be specifically from the United States. So this guy down here, Douglas MacArthur, he becomes the commander of all UN forces, right? He is going to be, very tough person, have a very strong personality, and we're going to see how that comes back to hurt him later on. Right, so this map is showing you some of the different phases. I put the red line here. This is the stuff we're going to worry about now, and this stuff we're going to worry about in a little bit. Right, but here's the initial North Korea invading South Korea. You can see here's the 38th parallel, the line of latitude dividing them. The green is showing you the Allied forces or the UN forces, South Korea. So the initial stages, North Korea almost completely overruns South Korea. So UN forces come. Okay, we now actually drive the communist forces of North Korea back towards China. Now this is where things start to get a little sticky. All right. China basically warns, here's China again, China warns the United Nations that if they continue to advance through North Korea, that they were going to have to get involved. Once again, China was communist, North Korea was communist. Right? MacArthur, the general I told you about before, hard-headed, really strong and firm, okay, he is going to order his troops to continue to advance. And, the United States was very wary of China getting involved. But because MacArthur ignored his orders, right, and continued advancing, now China is going to be involved. Right, and this is where things start to get a little sticky. Right, this is showing you a modern map of North and South Korea. Right, but MacArthur wants to go a step further. He now wants to go to war with China, which Truman doesn't want to. Remember, we just finished World War II. We don't want to have a direct conflict with the Soviet Union, right, which if we went to war with Korea, we would. All right, we all know why we don't want to go to war with the Soviet Union because of nuclear war. But MacArthur actually tries to go over Truman's head, and he gets the newspapers and the American public involved saying, we need to do this, we should do this. And Truman eventually just had him canned, fired him. All right, he was the commander-in-chief. He had that power, right? And then after Truman's term, Dwight D. Eisenhower, you should remember him. He was a famous World War II general. He led the Allied landing at D-Day. He becomes president, and one of the things he promises to do is end the war quickly. Right, now we get into McCarthyism, right? Now you're going to have a little treat here in a second from Mr. McCarthy, right? So, just come back after that and maybe look at this, just some of the facts here, right? And then I found this funny poster here, right? Uncle Joe is from the clip as well. But McCarthyism is something that is definitely coming back because if you, if you get charged with something or someone accuses you of something, right, your reputation is what gets hit. All right, we're here talking about Section 2, the Korean War, McCarthyism. I'm here with my good friend, Mr. McCarthy, the other 8th grade science teacher, Mr. Johnson's co-worker down there.
One of the things we're going to talk about is the Red Scare, the second Red Scare after World War II, and a guy by the name of Joseph McCarthy. Do you know him?
Oh, yes,
my
Uncle Joe. He used to come to our house for holidays, Thanksgiving, and in particular, and we used to go outside and play football. And he was kind of a crazy cat. He would do an awful lot of yelling and screaming. Was always on a soapbox about the other people in the family that were a little sketchy. Maybe had some associations that weren't very nice.
So Joe McCarthy was your uncle?
Joe McCarthy, yes.
Uncle Joe. So whenever you see something about Joseph McCarthy, whether it's in your notes and your work pack around your test, you're going to think about this McCarthy. Not really his Uncle Joe, but McCarthy. After World War II, right, there was that massive fear of communists. So Joe McCarthy, he was a senator from Wisconsin, he actually used some of the same tactics that the Romans used against Jesus Christ, that Hitler used against the Jews and other groups he deemed undesirable. He was able to whip up this fear, this mass hysteria against communists. Do you want to tell everybody what communists are?
Sure.
In case we maybe don't remember.
Communists would be countries like the USSR, China, North Korea. Those are countries that are governed by a group of people that are very selective, and everybody else more or less suffers. It's supposed to be all sharing, but that's not exactly how that works out. But yes, well, not my Joe, but Joe McCarthy used to...
Uncle Joe McCarthy.
Uncle Joe McCarthy. He used, he was not very well known to begin with. He was just that kind of average kind of guy in the Senate. And then he made a speech where he accused 208 people of, he had a list of State Department employees that were associated with communists, and that the government knew about this and they were not doing anything about it. And so this created quite a hysteria, because communism we were in the middle of the Cold War, ratcheting down, some serious accusations back and forth. So then people started asking him about his evidence about this, and he had these big hearings, and it was a really big deal, but he never really had any substantial evidence for this. But he ruined people's lives, and he accused them and people's families, and really ran them through the ringer. And
yeah.
it was really
we do have a family portrait. Mr. McCarthy was able to pull this out. You can maybe see the likeness. I think Mr. McCarthy is just a little bit more better looking. But the important thing he touched on there was that he didn't have any hard evidence. All right? So the term McCarthyism is where you accuse somebody of being a spy or a traitor or not loyal to the country without having any actual evidence. So you would just walk around and be like, you're a communist. And guess what? People believed him. So if you had a really good job, a respectable job, and you were accused of being a communist, you were fired from your job, you were possibly arrested, right? People kind of just shunned you because you now had the label of being a communist. All right, so make sure we kind of make that connection between this Mr. McCarthy and this Mr. McCarthy. Okay? All right, you're good.
Listen up. My name is Mr. McCarthy. I come in the office. I have a list right here of people, students in this room, who are part of a resistance group whose sole objective is to disrupt our evacuation drill procedures. I'm going to name them now. They need to go to the office. Victor, you're part of this group. You're the leader. I know you are. I have evidence right here. Get out. Go. Michael Conklin, where are you? Don't try to hide from me. Michael Conklin, your life's about to be ruined. You've been identified. I have evidence right here. Don't mess with me. Not even joking.
The FBI is right behind him. They will come in and have you removed.
Tell me where Michael Conklin is. Get out.
You have no proof.
Really?
No
We'll find out. Let me hear it. You'll have your chance. Good luck.
Ridiculous.
Cheyenne. You. Active member of this resistance group. Out. If I find out that any of you have any ties to these people, you will also be removed. You'll spend the rest of your time in ACEs. Yes. I'll be back. Stay away from that resistance group. Watching. Always watching.
Looking at the Cold War elsewhere around the world, all right, all throughout the world, we were trying to stop the spread of communism, all right, and we actually overthrew, used special forces to overthrow some governments right, around the world. So this one up here is in Iran, 1953. Some of us are doing the Iran-Contra affair or the Iranian hostages. We were actually involved in Iran long before that happens. 1954, we helped overthrow the government in Guatemala. And then the Suez Canal crisis, right, we don't get directly involved. We do send some help and some aid, but it's more Britain, because Britain owned the Suez Canal. Egypt tries to take it over. The Soviet Union threatens to get involved. Once again, we're pushed to the brink of war, but people, the conflict ends up being resolved without war. Right? And then onto a non-military effect of the Cold War. Right? Starting in 1957, both countries are going to have a competition, a race to see who can make the most advances in space. Right? So Soviet Union wins the first leg of the race by sending Sputnik into outer space, which was the first satellite. Okay, we are then going to pump billions and billions of dollars trying to compete with the Soviet Union, right? And this now sees, the first dog go into space, man go into space, the space, sending up the International Space Station. This is going to continue until the end of the Soviet Union, where we start working together. So it's more whoever has the better space technology is the more powerful country, right? And this is just kind of summing together, right, kind of the space race. So just hit pause and look at it. Uncle Sam is always symbolic of the United States, and a bear is always kind of symbolic of the Soviet Union. Right, one more incident that pushed us almost to the brink of war was the U-2 incident. Right, the U-2 was a spy plane that the U.S. used, and here's a picture of one down here. We also used it during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Right? But essentially what we were doing was, before Eisenhower met with the leader of the Soviet Union at this time, Nikita Khrushchev, all right, there was an American spy plane that was shot down over the Soviet Union. And Eisenhower tried to deny it, but Nikita Khrushchev had the parts in the plane, right? So that led to, once again, pushing us almost to the brink of war. All right, and then this is a famous picture. You guys actually wouldn't believe it, right? But your parents and your grandparents did live through this. It was definitely way before my time. But these are what referred to as air raid drills, right? Where in the event of a nuclear bomb, okay, students were trained, just like we have fire drills and evacuation drills, they had air raid drills, right? Where they were, instructed to hide under their desks, which we know that if a nuclear missile were to be launched, that the desk is not made of some nuclear deterrent plastic or wood, right? But it was essentially everybody was preparing for such a disaster.